The Munich Security Conference is usually an affair of cautious diplomacy and measured pronouncements. It's where the world's most powerful figures gather to discuss the biggest challenges facing the international community. This year, however, the conference was shaken by a speech that was anything but cautious. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, in a speech that surprised many, delivered a stark warning to European leaders. Vance's message was simple. The West is facing an unprecedented crisis, and the old ways of doing business are no longer sufficient. He argued that the liberal international order, painstakingly constructed after World War II, is crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. The vice president pointed to the rise of populism and nationalism as evidence of this trend, arguing that these forces are feeding off of a growing sense of unease among ordinary people. The vice president argued that this unease is rooted in a number of factors, including economic inequality, mass migration, and the erosion of national identity. He argued that these trends have been exacerbated by the policies of the liberal elite, which he accused of being out of touch with the concerns of ordinary people. Vance's speech was met with a mixture of shock and anger by many European leaders. Some accused him of being isolationist and protectionist, while others argued that his diagnosis of the problems facing the West was simplistic and inaccurate. However, there were also those who found themselves agreeing with at least some of what he had to say. One of the most controversial aspects of Vance's speech was his focus on immigration. The vice president argued that mass migration is one of the biggest threats facing the West today, and he accused European leaders of having lost control of their borders. Vance pointed to the recent terrorist attack in Munich, which was carried out by an Afghan asylum seeker, as evidence of the dangers of unchecked immigration. He argued that Europe is at risk of being overrun by people from cultures that are fundamentally incompatible with Western values. The vice president's comments on immigration were met with fierce opposition from many quarters. Human rights groups accused him of scapegoating refugees and migrants, while economists pointed out that immigration has been a net positive for European economies. However, Vance's words resonated with a growing number of people who are concerned about the impact of immigration on their societies. The debate over immigration is likely to continue for many years to come. It is a complex issue with no easy answers, and it is one that is likely to become even more divisive as the world becomes increasingly interconnected. Looming over the conference was the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, a conflict that has come to embody the new era of geopolitical competition. Just days before the conference began, a Russian drone struck the protective shell at Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. While radiation levels remained stable, the attack sent shockwaves through the international community. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who met with Vance on the sidelines of the conference, called the attack a message from Putin to the West. He argued that the attack was a sign that Russia is willing to escalate the conflict in Ukraine, and he called on the international community to take a tougher stance against Moscow. Vance, for his part, reiterated the Trump administration's call for increased NATO defense spending, arguing that Europe must do more to share the burden of its own defense. He suggested that the United States may be forced to rethink its commitment to NATO if European countries do not increase their defense budgets. The Chernobyl incident, coupled with the ongoing fighting in eastern Ukraine, served as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace in Europe. It also highlighted the growing divide between the United States and its European allies over how to deal with Russia. Vance's speech in Munich was a watershed moment in transatlantic relations. It exposed the deep divisions that have emerged between the United States and Europe in recent years, and it raised serious questions about the future of the transatlantic alliance. Many European leaders were deeply critical of Vance's speech, accusing him of undermining the liberal international order and of being too willing to accommodate Russia. French Deputy Foreign Minister Benjamin Haddad, for example, described Europe as being at a turning point and urged the continent to reduce its reliance on the United States for security. The Trump administration, for its part, has shown little interest in repairing relations with Europe. On the contrary, the administration seems intent on pursuing a more unilateralist foreign policy, one that prioritizes American interests above all else. It remains to be seen what the long-term consequences of this transatlantic rift will be. However, one thing is clear: the world is entering a new and uncertain era, one in which the old rules no longer apply.